I'm going live on this side, and I think this one is still going. I'm not sure, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's as good as it can go. All right. So yesterday, me and you had a really good conversation about people not being aware of what's right and wrong. A smaller town in US of A did not know what that had no clue of the history between Nazis and the Jews. So do you care to tell us this story again?
Well,
That friend of yours that lived in a small town, that it's quite an interesting story, that friend of yours.
about the newspaper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a school newspaper that they had, and the editor, such a big believer in free speech, thought that it was really, really cool to, and this editor didn't know a single Jewish person, who grew up in the deep South, where there are lots of Jewish people, but they were pretty segregated, and didn't, got a visit one day from this guy, and he said, I'm a Nazi, and Hitler's birthday is coming up. It's in April, I think, actually. I don't remember. Anyway, his birthday was coming up, and I want to put it out in the newspaper. And, back in this time, it was free speech, and oh yeah, that was exciting, free speech. And so they stupidly agreed and patted themselves on the back about, oh, we're so First Amendment, and this is just us. We're living the First Amendment because we have free speech, and we allow anything and everything short of, whatever. And so there in the weekly newspaper was an ad celebrating happy birthday to Hitler, and
That's
we were all patting each other on the back like, wow, we are the First Amendment. We're going to get the editor of the New York Times is going to call us and go, wow, you guys are so courageous. And within about 10 minutes of it happening, there was a knock on their door, and they got their senior advisor came in and said, the chancellor wants to talk to all of us. And surprise, 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 it had offended many, 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 many people.
Yes.
And a lesson was learned.
Go on.
That was it. It was a apology was issued, and a lesson was learned.
Yes. So this is, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that someone would not know the history of Hitler and Jews.
Hitler.
Yeah. So because they didn't know that emotional intelligence did the best they knew, the best they had emotional storage of, on freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because a lot of countries don't have freedom of speech. America prides itself with freedom of speech.
Yeah, and this was everyone on the staff of this thing. They were all very excited, and the editor had fought in Vietnam, and he was a Vietnam, and it was just all very innocent. But yeah, you're right. It was a lot of they had no clue on what they were doing, and you live and learn. But still, it was very weird.
Yes.
But yes, this has been, way back in the 60s, but still.
Yes. So you're a professional, you're a licensed clinical social worker, and you've worked in the behavioral field for many years.
Yeah, a long time.
What's the best advice that you can give someone when it comes to down-regulating emotion and emotional awareness? It has to do a lot with down-regulating emotion and what down-regulating actually means, because I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what down-regulating means.
Well, one of the things you said when you're talking about anger, or I mean fear, excuse me, fear. Fear is an extremely, like you said, very powerful. There was a big story in the New York Times this week about one of the hosts on Fox News. Can't think of his name, but he's their biggest star right now. And they sat down and watched 1,100 hours of his show. And what they determined, they were trying to be objective. What they determined, the predominant theme was be afraid. That was the predominant thing, the politics aside, the predominant thing that he preached and he promoted was we have a lot to be fearful of and be very scared. Be scared of losing your identity, be scared of losing your freedom, be scared of losing your guns, be scared of your kids being turned into something else. Just fear. That was the predominant, and that approach has brought him the biggest audience, in the biggest audience in the television, in the network, for the network.
Yes, and that is very sad. And that network happens to be a very conservative network, and that conservative network is largely indoctrinated by religion, and it takes away religion, the doctrine of the religion. It takes it to a whole different level. And actually, I just heard the story from a different person, what you just said about this person. We don't want to repeat their name. But what's happening there, there is a lot of manipulation that's been going on. Mass media has been manipulated for a very, very long time. But what people are not very familiar with is that we have a choice as to not respond to this manipulation or fear. So it's not just about love and fear. It's not just that the amygdala pretty much responds to fear and it responds to love and it responds to laughter, right? It's not a dual, but it comes to polarity. So this person so polarized all of their messaging to instill fear. That is just it's a pitiful thing to do. But then why people are attracted to such polarizing and fear expanding, fear promoting messages, it has to do with the triangle. It's called victim, rescuer, prosecutor. So the way the people are manipulated is through making them believe that they are victims of circumstances. And then when someone believes that that's a victim, then they want to prosecute the perpetrator, right? So then here is this person that it's aware of this mechanism and is just going to instill more fear to excite them, because to some extent fear is also excitement, right? And then look at the entertainment. How much pleasure do we get out of people killing other people in the movies? Yeah, that it's the violence is rewarded. And people don't even know that a reward is not made just with money, right? A reward is made with paying attention to, with being ignorant of how something works. And uneducated people, you could kind of understand that, but then educated people to hold on so strong to values, to this kind of values, that this is right and this is wrong, and these people should die and these people should leave, is not right. So this I don't want to go into too much detail into victim rescue prosecutor. I've been talking about with you outside of the slides for a while. It's the ugliest thought feeling patterns that was ever instilled in consciousness. And if we are to think of consciousness right now for the purpose of this discussion, because consciousness does not have a definition and it takes a few hours to define consciousness, but for right now, if we are to think consciousness as similar to the air we breathe, consciousness, collective consciousness, there is something where all the thoughts go, and collective consciousness is something somewhere we think from. So then having, it's very pitiful. It's very pitiful for someone in this position to be in a position of reaching a lot of people instead of promoting kindness and compassion and gratitude and appreciation and respect. The respect for the first and foremost, he chooses to promote fear. It's pitiful, right?
Yeah, because it's pitiful, but very lucrative. It just shows the power of fear. You know how powerful, and if we try to become aware of what fear is, and we start looking for it, all of a sudden, you'll hear it everywhere, all over media, social media, everywhere. Be afraid of something. Be afraid of something happening. And it's
that's polarized. Yes, it's polarized. Yeah. We are supposed to be afraid of things. We're not supposed to put our hands on hot plates. Don't put your hand on a fire. Don't walk in front of a driving car. We are supposed to have some sort of fear. Fear is a built-in mechanism in the physical body to protect you, to save your life, to keep you safe. To keep you safe and secure. You're not supposed to trust everything. And this is where manipulation happens, because they say, fear this, but don't fear this. Be afraid of this, but here I am. Don't be afraid of me. So it plays with people's minds in a very ugly way. But what I want people to know is that everybody has a choice to not be entrained, to not be pulled into this triangle, because it's very hard to get out of this triangle. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of classes and a lot of schooling to get out. I mean, coaching, not schooling, training, to get out of the victim, rescue, prosecutor triangle.
And the first way of avoiding it is to being aware of when it's happening.
Yeah.
Being aware of when somebody's trying to scare you, or trying to make you fear, make you afraid. Yeah. It happens a lot.
Yeah. So with uneducated people, people that don't have access to information, I'm talking about people that don't have access to information, you can kind of understand, or people that are just polarized, but no. And then, as we increase our emotional intelligence, we want to pay attention to what stimulates you. It's a story like this person that he puts out. This story is something like that stimulates you, that there's a sneeze. I was a sneeze. or is it possible for you to be stimulated by laughter, to be stimulated by respect, by kindness, by compassion, right? Because kindness is free, right? But if you look at it, fear, people pay money to listen to fear. People pay money to be entertained by fear, because to some extent, a lot of people are numb, right? And then those people that are numb, they take fear as excitement. It's like, something that's happening in my life. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. And then there are other people that that there's so many different layers of propagating and promoting fear, and even just going into criticism, constantly criticizing what's wrong. You're rewarding fear. You're rewarding what's wrong, right? So instead, you want to reward what's right. And oftentimes, kindness and respect might be boring, right? Because they might not be as exciting, right? But guess what? With kindness and respect, nobody goes to war with kindness and respect.
Yeah, and the big, yes, it can be boring with kindness and respect, because the interest that people have is in conflict. That's what drives literature, and what drives a lot of people's interest in things is conflict. So yeah, it's a jump to try to get past that.
Yeah.
To look on the other side of
it. Yeah. And it's sad. And my first advice to everybody that is just overwhelmed, and my first advice is to keep away from propagating fear, is to look at criticism. Be aware when you engage in criticism, or when you are attracted to criticism, and when you are on the side of criticism. And it doesn't mean we eliminate criticism out of your thinking and evaluating, because you need to have your inner critic. But from inner critic to constant criticism, it's quite a polarity. Right, and we want to not be polarized, right? We want balance. This is what everybody it's after in life: balance, right? But in order to stay away from fear, look at criticism, because it doesn't mean that if you don't criticize, that you agree with the perpetrator. Absolutely not. You can, and then someone said that, well, if I don't say anything about it, then nothing will be done. Yes and no, because you can say something about it, but you can say it in a way in which it's not criticized. Mm-hmm. Like you just presented this interesting aspect. You presented the aspect, and you didn't jump into criticizing this. So emotional intelligence is gonna come into play to help us become aware that this criticism is the first step into becoming aware, to stepping out of this triangle, right?
Becoming aware of when we're influenced by it, when it's
yes.
when it's impacting us, and what are we feeling and why.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And what are we doing to make that feeling happen? Not blaming somebody else for making us feel that way, but what is it that's making us? What inside is being triggered?
That's victimhood right here. Blaming someone. It's you're a victim. So here's the triangle of victim, rescuer, prosecutor. In a constant state of criticism, there's going to be blame. So you're going to be a prosecutor and a victim all at the same time, just within criticism, because you're going to blame someone, you're going to criticize them and blame them because you're a victim or somebody else is a victim, and then you are waiting for a prosecutor to come fix it. Yeah. And this is how people are manipulated. Mm-hmm. This is how you hijack your emotions. Mm-hmm. This is how mass people and overall planet are manipulated. And then if you look at indigenous people don't have this in their consciousness. The victim, rescuer, prosecutor, they're very responsible. They're highly efficient, self-sufficient, and very responsible. Yeah. So my my advice, the easiest and the quickest way to get to step out of this triangle is pay attention to who you're blaming, who you're criticizing, are you attracted to criticism, and then be aware that you're blaming something or someone. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to be upset over things. If you're dealing with chronic illness, for example, I mean, there's going to be days when you're going to say, I am tired of it. And of course, you're going to be tired of it. And if it's, I hope not, if someone is in an abusive relationship, then of course they are the victim of the abusive relationship. And right now with the war going around, there's lots of victims fleeing that country, right? So in that aspect, in that context, of course, it's going to be a rescuer, that all of the refugees are going to be rescued as to provide them with food and shelter, because that's a basic need, right? And then, of course, when someone is aware that somebody else is being abused in a relationship, might step in and help. Or the victim might just go and ask for help. There's many situations. We're not going to cover all of them right here in this discussion. But the idea is that if victim rescue prosecutor exists outside of people's identity. So this is how this person got so popular. We're not going to say his name. We're not going to mention his network. This is how he got so popular and attracted everybody, because he worked, he promoted the fear, and then this reached in people's hearts and their identity, because people identified with the religion that he was promoting and he's affiliated with. And then said religion, that religion says that if you do this, that's going to happen. And if you do this, then that's going to happen. So the dogma of the religion is not bad, right? But the dogmatic part of the religion, it keeps people entrained in fear, right? Well, that's not healthy either. So now nobody says don't go to church anymore, because that's not the answer. Right? The answer is have emotional intelligence and recognize that these things, you don't want to be controlled, nor by fear, nor by victimhood, and nor by constantly rescuing people either. Right? Because there's a lot of the other behavior of, because the moment you're going to criticize and blame someone, then you're just going to jump into rescuing and do something when somebody didn't even ask you to. You become a meddler. You stick your nose into somebody else's business. So that's the rescuer aspect of this triangle that you do want to stay away from. That's the hardest to do.
Yeah, it's like pain. There's different types of pain. There's the real pain that if I cut myself while I'm cooking, that hurts. There's real pain. But there's also mental and emotional pain. Yes. And there's victimhood, and then there's real victimhood. The people who are killed in the tsunami, they're really victims. They're not. It's not a mental game they're playing. It's not a mental attitude. That's really happens. The people in Syria and they're true victims, and in Ukraine. So there's the real victim, and then there's the mental victim, and the mental victim is more insidious. It's harder to address because it sometimes is a part of who we see as our identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes
and it could. Oh, I'm sorry, Carmen. I was just going to say, which you well know. I mean, and in fact, I would ask you this. That's one thing that hypnosis could help with, because it can address those core identity patterns that cause that, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's just this, the hypnosis goes to the heart of the problems really quick, and it works to solve the problems. It's not looking just to identify the problems and then put you into some sort of category. I mean, you're a licensed psychotherapist and you're a certified hypnotherapist too, and you know the difference between these two. So psychotherapy was developed out of hypnosis. So hypnosis goes to the root of the problem and have you identify those blockages, the parts within you that are keeping you stuck.
Right.
Yeah, the subconscious, of course, the subconscious that keep you stuck into this behavior of victim, rescue, prosecutor that is causing you unhappiness, that is causing you ill.
Right, which is different than being a real victim.
Correct. But see, this is what the manipulation is, because in real life, the victims exist in a physical aspect. Victim of an act of God. It's a tsunami. You're a victim of a tsunami. You're a victim of a hurricane. You're a victim of war. You're a victim of gun violence. You're a victim of physical violence and all that, right? But to begin to identify with that, because you like something or you don't like something, it's gonna mess. It's really gonna mess with your health. And right now, what do you think is going on right now over the social media? Who identifies with abortion being legal or not? Well, I have a lot of opinions on that, and opinions are valid. But how much is my opinion, my stand on that is going to count? How much weight is it going to have over the final decision made if I just put a post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media? It's not gonna have any weight, right? As opposed to people that are over there peacefully rallying on it and saying, no, this is not right, we're not standing for it. They have a bigger impact on that. But what's me putting a post on social media, I agree with this and I disagree with that. And I'm seeing, I'm seeing some educated people. I'm seeing some people educated in the field of psychology saying it. They're phrasing, and neurolanguage is one of my specialty, right? So they're phrasing it in such a political template. Just like a politician would say, well, I don't agree or disagree with that. I agree and disagree with this fact and this fact and this fact. Just so typical political. And you kind of, emotional intelligence has a lot to do with behavior. And you would expect that professional in the field of psychology would be aware of those things, but they're not. So then we go back to what I started. Emotional intelligence is not taught in school. Emotional intelligence in psychology, it's not the same thing. The psychology is a whole industry that has so many different areas. But emotional intelligence